Alice, and I am the Deputy Director for New Mexico MESA. And here with us, we have Mr. Jerry Prochazka. Did I say that right?
Close
Not even
enough.
close?
The C is silent, Prochazka, but yeah, close enough.
Okay. I tried. I gave it a good attempt, but thank you so much. He is the CEO of or co-founder of Ganymede Games here in Las Cruces, New Mexico. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it on over to him. Thank you for being here with us.
Hey, thanks so much, everybody. Well, thanks for inviting me. That's probably the first part. I'm really happy to be here, so thank you. And again, I'm here to answer questions and help everybody else sort of whether it's launch your career or answer questions about games. So I thought a good place to start today would be to tell you a little bit about myself, how I got into video games and kind of my background. And then from there, I can talk a little bit about what we're working on, but I really like to jump in as soon as possible to everybody's questions and what you guys really want to hear about. So I'm going to start there. I got my start far away from video games, actually. I started out, of all things, in nuclear engineering. So I was a nuclear engineer for 12 years, then went to grad school at the University of Chicago, which is where I'm from. I'm originally from Chicago. And then after that, I went to work at Accenture, which is a global consulting firm. And while I was there, I got involved in esports. This is around 2006, and ended up sort of running the most successful esports console organization for a really long time called VV Gaming. Had like top 4 LAN finishes across 14 different games on like 4 continents. So it was a lot of fun. But that's where Riot Games found me. The year was 2012, and it was the same year that EA was voted the worst place to work in America. So I wasn't even sure I wanted to work in video games. But met Mark and Brandon at Riot Games and really felt good about what they were doing. So I made that leap, a chance to kind of combine my passion with my career. So was at Riot for 3 years, ended up being on Fortune's top 100 places to work 2 years in a row. So that was a big accomplishment for me as I led all of HR and recruiting and talent. So when Tencent finally bought out the rest of Riot Games, I made a transition to wargaming overseas. So I worked in Europe. And while there, was the chief human resource officer, as well as sort of on the publishing leadership team as well. So ran things like esports and third-party publishing. And that's where I got the idea for Ganymede Games, and then came back to the US, did a multi-state search, and New Mexico kind of won the team over. And now we're in New Mexico, and looked at Santa Fe, Albuquerque, but Las Cruces really kind of both gave us a good deal, but also really resonated well with the team. Really beautiful area down here in southern New Mexico. So that's kind of the story and kind of my career. So I worked on League, World of Tanks, World of Warships, ran a third-party publishing business, and of course, both at Riot Games and Wargaming, recruiting rolled up under me as an executive leader. So got a lot of visibility in how we hired both leadership, but most importantly, entry-level roles across the spectrum. So hopefully I can provide some sort of interest to you guys, or at least some kind of advice. So with that being said, that's a little bit about me. Right now, Ganymede Games is just wrapping up its Kickstarter for Xenotheria, which is our first card battler. We're a small team of 8 developers, kind of distributed because of the pandemic. 3 of us are here in Las Cruces. The other 5 are sort of around the globe. So yeah, it's been a real sort of interesting but fun ride while we're sort of working through the pandemic. So that's kind of a background to me and what Ganymede Games is doing. So I'd love to answer questions or anything at all. I'm game.
Well, everyone's thinking of their questions. I'll go ahead and get started. How has that, now that you're here in New Mexico, like what does the industry look like here for the state, or like local students, going into degree plans and that sort of industry that could possibly say work for your company down in Las Cruces?
Yeah, I mean, look, the industry has changed a lot because of the pandemic. Most teams are distributed now, and we were distributed before the pandemic, but the pandemic accelerated a lot of our practices around distributed developments. You might have even Ganymede Games. We have artists in Turkey, in Russia, Australia, you're going to look for the best talent wherever they live. So if you're a talented young artist or engineer or designer, you can code, you can create from anywhere in the world. So I think the pandemic has accelerated a lot of organizations making distributed development embedded into how they make games. So I think wherever you live is a great time to get involved in games. As far as New Mexico in particular, the big thing that brought us here was the film tax credit. It also applies to digital media, and it's a really good deal. And so then we did a kind of multi-school tour, NMSU, we were at New Mexico Tech, then we came up to UNM, and we sort of looked at all the programs, game design, engineering, art, and we felt that New Mexico had a lot of good programs, so their students were getting something that was going to be immediately relevant to us in games right out of the gate. So I think there's a lot of positive here, and we've been here. I moved here in August of 2018. So, we've been here at 3 full years. We started Ganymede Games in 2019. So everyone's been super happy. So it's been really good. So I think the sort of future is really bright for New Mexico.
So I'm going to read just, I'll be the moderator from the chat, unless I don't know if you have access or whatever your preference is. But there is a question there that says, what is your favorite aspect of video game design?
That's a tough question. I think probably the most interesting part for me personally is finding space to create something new. It's a pretty saturated market, and coming up with new game design ideas gets increasingly more difficult. So when you can thread that needle and do something unique and tell a good story, and most importantly, give players an amazing experience, that's probably the best. And, we live in a pretty interesting time where what platform players play on, whether they're casual or more hardcore, whether they're competitive or not, there's just a lot of diversity. And for me, I like most creating immersive worlds for players to kind of leave the real world and be entertained and have a wonderful experience in an entirely different world. That's probably what I love the most about game design. Where I lived in Europe when we did publishing leadership, that's a question. I lived on the island of Cyprus. So that's in the Eastern Mediterranean. Wargaming, which originally got its roots in Minsk, Belarus, moved its corporate headquarters to Cyprus. So that's where I joined the leadership team in Nicosia, which is the capital of the EU side of Cyprus. So yeah, that was a really wonderful and interesting experience, but I'm glad I did it. While I was there, because I was running publishing, I got to travel like 27 different countries around the globe, both where we had publishing offices as Wargaming, but also, doing due diligence visits on developers, checking their studios out, deciding if we wanted to build a relationship with them and publish their games. So yeah, that's kind of what I did there. What degree or degrees would you need to work for a gaming company? Well, look, I'm going to be honest. The most important thing you can do is build something, create something. So very rarely are we going to look at the exact degree you have. We're not going to look at your grades. We're going to ask for your portfolio. We're going to ask for, if you're an engineer, what did you code? What did you design as a designer? Let me see your art. And that you have a really clear vision of what you want to be: character artist, system designer, creative designer, narrative designer, level designer, environment artist, UI artist, that you have a really clear goal, and that you've built a portfolio around what you want to do. So it's less about, unless you're an engineer and you went to a top tier engineering school, it's less about the school and degree and more about the quality of your portfolio as a designer. Even as an engineer who built something, has already created something, got some awesome code up on GitHub, that's going to be worth more than just going to school. So school is not enough, is the way I would kind of look at it. You want to have really focused your portfolio and your work before you start applying.
So
Yeah, it
for
was. What were you gonna say?
now, I'm going to say for young students that are wanting to get that experience, like where do you suggest that maybe they start? Like if I wanted to just break into, like, where would be a good place to start, like with coding or just getting that experience as a young kid,
Yeah,
student?
look, both UNM, some of the community colleges like Donania Community College have really good game design programs. They're practical. What you're looking for when you're deciding on going to any kind of game design or art school is how quickly can you start working on teams and have team-related projects, right? We make games in sort of this, at a very basic level, this kind of trinity, right? There's game design, there's engineering, and there's art. And you want to work on teams as soon as you can in your career where you're working with people who have different skills, right? One of the exciting sort of moments of magic that happen in games is that the people who work together have very different skill sets. And they need to learn to trust each other and work well together. The engineer has to trust that the artist is going to create great art. The artist is going to trust that the engineer is going to write good code. So you really want to get that experience as soon as possible where you're working on teams with people who have different skills. And some schools have better programs than others. UNM does it, the ACC does it. And if you're not going to want to go to those schools, another thing you can do is look for independent projects that are looking for somebody with your skill set. You can Google, there's like a good website, indie game jobs, indie development game jobs. I forgot the exact website, but if you Google it, it'll come right up. And that's a great place to look for people who are looking for engineers, artists, stuff like that. Let's see, can a talented and imaginative artist do this without being particularly code savvy? Yeah, as long as you partner with an engineer, absolutely. Designer, that's what I'm getting at, right? Unless you want to be a tech artist, if you want to be a tech artist, then you definitely need to learn to code. But if you're an artist, you know how to use Maya, maybe you're a 2D artist, you're in Spine. As long as you know how to use the software and get those software into big game engines like Unreal Engine or Unity, yeah, you should be good to go. And I'm going to plug that right now. You can get Unity and Unreal, you download that for free. So if you haven't played, if you haven't learned how to use Unity and Unreal, you're not trying. The top students, they're out there putting stuff in games, even if they're just building a level that you can walk through with no game design as an artist. That's better than doing nothing. Why did you switch game developing? I don't know what that means, Samuel. What do you mean by why did you switch? Do you like to do any art when it comes to video game designing, or would you rather design code for games? I like designing systems. I like designing narrative. I'm not an artist and I'm not a coder. So I'm not a person who does I share my vision with artists. They bring that to life. I share what I need the game functionally to do, and I work with tech to do that. So my design background is really around system design, numbers, crunching, and narrative design, creative design. What's the world? What are the characters? What is their kit or their abilities? What does that look like? What you did before, what was the reason you switched? Why did I leave I've been a lifelong gamer. I started playing games on the Atari 2600. I played Dungeons and Dragons back when I was a kid. I've been around games my whole life. So being able to do what I love, I haven't worked a day since 2012, and I've never felt like I've been working. It's always been a passion play for me, a lot of fun. What code language and software do you use? Well, if you're in Unity, you're going to want to use C#. If you're in Unreal, you're going to want to use C++. C++ and C# are the industry standards, so that's what you should be learning to code in if you want to be a game engineer and really work on heavy game items. Let's see, what is your favorite part of gaming design? I think that was asked before, but I'll go over it again. I like creating the worlds. I like creating the character, the worlds, the environment, and I also like building systems. I have a heavy systems background, as a nuclear engineer, systems kind of come naturally to me, but I also have a strong creative thing. So I like building the worlds, the environments, what players are going to experience, kind of end to end, right? What is the onboarding like? What is the sort of pacing of the game? What are the systems like? How do you give players interesting and meaningful choices as you're designing every step of the way? All that's really fun for me. How long did it take your current game to be built and brought to market? We've been working on Xenotheria for almost a year. We built 3 prototypes in the 2 years that we've been up, and Xenotheria was the one we thought we would take to market first. So when you're making games, it's really important to experiment and play with different ideas, get them in engine, start playing with them, and then decide which one you want to take to market. So 3 prototypes. We took the 3rd prototype, Xenotheria, to market just now. So yeah. What's the procedure for testing prototypes? It's really a team effort. I won't let anybody be on any of my game teams that isn't a hardcore gamer. If you're not a hardcore gamer, I won't work with you, right? You have to be able to understand what players experience. So everybody on a team I hired, so I trust that they are gamers who love the games we're making. And so when they're testing it, they're comparing it to their favorite games, and they're also making sure that it feels fresh and new. So prototype testing is really a team effort, because if the team doesn't love the game, they're not going to make an amazing game. So it's getting everybody on the team as excited about the game as I myself might be excited. So it's definitely an internal team thing when you're testing your prototypes.
I have another question. You had mentioned esports, that's kind of, maybe back where you started. And esports is taking off here in New Mexico, where they've had, state champions and things. For someone that's not as knowledgeable about maybe what that entails, can you maybe talk a little bit about what esports is? Like what, for someone that wants to get in?
Look, esports is, instead of kicking a soccer ball, you're playing a video game. You might be on a team. League of Legends is probably one of the best known esports in the world. 5 players versus other 5 players. That gets streamed just like you would see it on television. Huge audiences, streaming websites like Twitch, YouTube, things like that. And people watch matches, they watch seasons, they have regular seasons, just like sports. Famous esports organizations, Cloud9, etc. So it's just like regular sports, except instead of on a physical field, it's in a digital world. Wildly popular. I mean, League of Legends has often trumped the NBA Finals, the World Series, like just wildly popular. So yeah. If I want to become an esports competitor, where do I begin? Where to start? Well, first off, I mean, you need to be really good at a game. You need to be out there playing the game you want to get good at. And you need to be following, the best players in that game on social media, on Twitch, watch them stream, and then practice. It's just like real sports, right? Every one of those teams has a practice schedule. They have, diet requirements, fitness, all kinds of things to keep themselves in top shape. And most of them stream as another source of revenue. So, you get into esports by following other esports players, looking at what they're doing, building relationships. Today, it's a lot easier because of social media, as well as the fact that a lot of high schools and universities have esports teams. That's another great place where you can get involved in esports. I'm hearing that to help my students who are interested in this field, I need to encourage them to practice coding or learn to use and practice these art systems. Any other suggestions? Look, I think there is no way, all the schools and universities I talk to, within 12 months, their students I think they've been really responsive. Get Unity, get Unreal. Unity is a little bit easier to code and add art to. So if you had to choose one system, Unity is not a bad place to work. Unity is, more used on mobile as a game engine than in some lighter console and PC games. Unreal is much more robust. If you're going to do a 3D shooter, I would be in Unreal as an example. But those game engines, the right software, that's the best you can do for your students. And then get them to do projects together. Homework is awesome, but at least at a minimum, do like a capstone event at the end of the year where you're dividing your class into teams and having them make games. That's as important as it can get. Is video game design the same for PC, Xbox, PlayStation, etc.? Gameplay can be very similar. Yeah, UI is often way different. But some gameplay doesn't work well, right? So it's much harder to do an RTS on the Switch, right? A real-time strategy game on Xbox or PC. It's done, or pardon me, Xbox or PlayStation. It's been done, but it's much better to do that on a PC. There are some games that work really well in mobile that would obviously be far less interesting on the Xbox or PC. So platform does matter, especially today with crossplay, where on the back end, console players, PC players can play in the same world. It's just a matter of designing different UI systems for the same gameplay. So some genre exceptions, broadly, you can go most anywhere. What does a UX UI designer do in the video game industry? I want to separate those two things. In the video game industry, a user experience professional and a user interface designer are two different people. I know in a lot of places those things get lumped together, and there's a lot of skill overlap between a user experience person and a user interface person, but they are different skill sets. And at the level that I like to use them, rarely do I find somebody who has the magical mix of both really well. User experience is somebody who can end-to-end journey map, do the whole step-by-step process, do the wireframes, do what you need to do and do it well. UI designer, that's about how something feels. And that's about being a hardcore gamer. I need my UI designer to be a hardcore gamer. I don't as much need my UX designer, because sometimes the UX designer who isn't a hardcore gamer can make something a lot more user-friendly, less assumptions in the UX designer. So I like to separate the two. I think a lot of people lump them together, but in video games, it's healthy to have a distinction between deep user experience skills and alternatively deep user interface design skills for the particular kind of game you're making. Do you need an expensive PC to run these things like Unreal Engine and Unity? Unity, not at all. Unreal Engine, depending on what you're doing, I mean, if you're going to render high-end graphics, that's different. But from a classroom perspective, you don't need that, because you don't need to be making high-end graphics. You're not going to be. It's not like you've got a team of 3D artists. You can get assets free on the Unity store. You can get assets free on the Unreal store. You need an okay PC for Unreal, but it doesn't need to be a high-end gaming PC, because you're not going to be connecting to a server and playing like competitive 5v5 esports. So take a school computer, download it, and also look for grants and other things. Unity, Unreal, Microsoft, they all have grants to help schools get stuff to do this. So look for alternative sources of funding if you can't get the district or the school to pay for it. What do you see the future of? What do you see for the future of gaming? Well, that's a big question. I don't know. It's the biggest entertainment form in the world, right? Like, take sports plus movies plus TV shows, and games dwarf all that. It's the single largest entertainment form in the world. So the future is bright. We're going through the middle of a revolution. You know that Facebook is called the metaverse, right? I think a lot of people are skeptical about that, but there's a lot of blockchain work being done, pay to earn type of games. I mean, there's all kinds of cool stuff going on. So I see the future, bright, awesome. Industry has a lot of challenges, but it's a growing industry, and it's working those things out as it's getting better and better at what it does. How can I convince my parents that this is a career that interest to start and not a joke and a waste of time? How to convince your parents? I don't know. Let me look. I was just looking real quick. I think there are probably at any given moment in time, 100,000 people working in games, if not more. So I don't know how to convince somebody that, working in games is a waste of time. I really don't. I have no idea how to answer that question. I think the best way to do it, though, is with data. You can go online and you can Google starting salaries for video game jobs. If you want to be an artist, Google how much does a 3D artist make? How much does a 2D artist make? There's a lot of resources out there, that real good data that you can use to show your parents that this is not a waste of time. I mean, games are everywhere. In a matter of fact, I'm sure we are probably, look, I don't know if you watch Twitch, but like there are congressmen and women who are on Twitch playing games, right? We're probably one or two presidents away from a gamer, right? So I just don't know how to, data, maybe. That's probably the most important thing. Get that data to them, show them all the jobs that are out there, because there are hundreds of thousands of people who work in video games. Can you use other things like Blender? Yes, you can. What are the salaries for starting positions? Well, it depends on the job, right? If you're an engineer, it's probably pretty good, maybe 90,000, 120,000 a year. If you're an artist, can be anywhere from, 50 to 80,000 a year, to start. If you're a designer, it's hard to start as a high-level designer. You're probably going to start somewhere junior, but it'll also be like an artist, about 60 to 90,000 a year. So really good starting salaries. Riot, I paid engineers, some of them 500,000 a year, just give an example. I've always made $500,000 or more at my last two jobs every year. So, you can build quite a bit of wealth working in video games. So keep that in mind. What else? What would you recommend starting for students and beginner developers? I would recommend starting in Unity. I'll say it over and over again. Get Unity, download it for free, start to build things, create games in Unity. That's a great place to start. If you're a little bit more advanced, get Unreal. They have a blueprint system, tons of tutorials on how to use Unreal's blueprint system, which really helps learn some of the structured thinking around how to do game design. What do I think is the most important part of game design? The customer, most important part. If you're not thinking about who exactly you're designing the game for, you're probably going to miss the mark. You need to know and have a really clear vision of who your customer is, their age, when they game, on what platform they game, what games they like, and why they're going to like this game. Very important in design. Who are you designing for, and what experience do you want them to have? If you love to draw, would this be a good job? Yeah, it would. Of course. We need all kinds of artists, right? So absolutely, yes. I would encourage all of you to look at, I'll put it in chat. If you guys want a really good schools, I would look at DigiPen. I would look at Full Sail. I would look at probably Seattle School of Design. These are all really well recognized, game schools. You can Google best video game design schools. I'm doing it now just to make sure it works. Yeah, you're going to get Full Sail. You're going to get, the Princeton reviewed as top game design schools, Full Sail, DigiPen, and Redmond. Those are always going to come up. So that's a really good place to start looking at really good schools. Full Sail's in Florida, if you don't know where that is. Being a good writer for games. Being a good writer, if you're a good novelist, that may not be great for games, right? If you're a good poet, if you write poetry, if you're a poet, that might not be the best thing for games, right? Probably, if you write episodic television, that's probably good for games, but it's a lot harder if you're a novelist or if you're someone who doesn't play games. But yeah, I mean, you need good writing for games if you're going to do an adventure game, a role-playing game, any kind of game where the narrative is an integral part of the experience. What is the hardest part about making a game? Customer, keeping them happy, making sure that you always keep them in mind, knowing that you can't make every customer happy. And so you need to really keep in mind that any genre of gamer, role-playing gamers, has like 10 subdivisions: JRPGs, classic RPGs, action RPGs. So you really need to know your audience well and understand you're probably not going to make a perfect game for everyone. And sometimes you try to get different people to come into a game. So it's really about that audience is the hardest part, really knowing who you're making the game for. What else?
When I was looking up, researching the game, it's on Kickstarter. What would be the benefit to like launching a game on Kickstarter, or how bringing it to market? I guess I just look at Kickstarter for different types of things. Like how does that work, or how does that play?
Yeah, well, Kickstarter does two things for us. The first thing it does is it lets us build relationships with players. The people who are going to spend money on this are the ones who are most excited about the game coming out. So it allows us to build relationships with those who already invested in helping us beta test the game and give us feedback on the game. That's the first thing. Second thing is it allows me to raise more money, because now I can prove to anybody who wants to invest in Ganymedes, hey, look, we raised some money. We had over 500 people who pre-purchased the game, and we have over 8,000 signups. So it allows us to raise more money from investors to build the game. So that's why you go to Kickstarter. You should never go to Kickstarter thinking you're going to raise money to make a video game. Video games cost too much money. But it is a way that you can go to market and prove to other people that people want your game. That's the most important thing.
If we're here at a little pause, I did YouTube up, and I don't know if this is the correct one, Xenotheria official Kickstarter launch trailer. Is that the correct one for your game?
Right. Yeah.
Would that be okay if I showed it here quickly to let people know your game? Let's see, share my screen.
Thanks for sharing that.
I had looked into it, so I thought that was pretty cool to share out to everybody to see the game. And again, I guess I'm personally excited. Just we've to have here in New Mexico, we're not traditionally known for video game design or this digital media. So I think this is just a really exciting project to be happening here in our home state.
Well, thank you. We're really happy to be here. So thanks. I think there is one question I didn't get to, which is what is the hardest part? No, I did answer that. It was the players. Anybody else have questions? Feel free to ask me anything. I really am an open book and I don't mind answering any question at all.
There's one more in the chat about music.
Do you have to purchase rights to music for the game, or do you hire someone to create music? We hire someone to create music, yeah. You can purchase rights, but we wanted original music because there will be other games in this universe if all goes well. So we wanted to definitely do original music. We worked with a team in Florida called Steamroller. They do music and they do trailers and things like that. So we'd worked with them before, so wanted to work with them again. Yeah, they're a really talented, creative team. So they want to do a quick motion graphic trailer for Kickstarter, and they put that together for us. Here's some. While you guys think about other questions, here's something that I want to share with all of you. If you take away anything today, I want you to remember just two things. The first one is build something. Create something. That's the most important thing. Second most important thing, network. Reach out, build relationships. You live in a time where everyone is reachable through social media. You have my name. You can look me up on LinkedIn. Any video game product, you can look at the credits and then look that person up on LinkedIn, reach out to them, say you're a student. Look for a mentor that is working in the industry. Don't be shy. The mentor can do so much to open up doors. You want to be a VFX artist? Go to YouTube. There are some incredible VFX artists. There's even a VFX Academy that is run by somebody who I have a lot of respect for. There are so many artists and designers who are sharing their knowledge. Build relationships with them. Reach out to them on social media. Tell them what you want to do. But it probably helps to have a portfolio, at least something before you go there, but get that kind of advice. Build stuff, network. If you remember nothing else from what I've said, remember those two things. I'm not sure how to ask this question, but if I were to try and encourage my students and writers for video games, where should they look for examples? The closest I can think of is D&D, but I don't even know if that's accurate. You can look at two places. One place I would look is every year in San Francisco, we hold what's called the Game Developers Conference. And the Game Developers Conference is known as GDC. So I'll put that in the chat. And GDC has something called the Vault. And the GDC Vault is a great place where you can get some amazing lectures and advice about everything from, how certain games achieve something to hear from writers who've expressed their challenges that they had to go through in writing for games. So definitely take a look at this. That would be my advice, is go to the GDC Vault. There's a ton of stuff on YouTube. And that'll help answer the question of where to go, because the nice part about the GDC Vault is some content is free. And of course, a lot of content on YouTube is free. And you can start to put together like a good starting place for your students based on some of the advice you see there. Let me know, Susie, if that answered your question. How do you house your portfolio? Do you have a recommendation for students on how to store their portfolio? Best work first. And make sure you don't show me your whole portfolio. If you're applying for a character artist, I want to see your character art. Focus your portfolio on the job you're submitting to. That's the most important thing. Don't make me look at your portfolio, click on 5 or 6 tabs because you made it convenient for yourself. You got your URL, you put it up on a website, and you have 5 tabs because you're not sure what job you want. So you have a character tab, an environment tab, a prop tab, a UI tab. I'm already not going to look at your portfolio. I'm not even going to look at it, right? So if you don't make it as simple as me to review your portfolio, I have 20 other people who I'm going to look at before they would all have to suck before I looked at your shitty portfolio, to be honest, right? Sorry, being honest, but you get the idea. Make it as simple for the person reviewing your portfolio as possible. If you're applying to be a UI artist, show them UI art. And in your portfolio, just don't show finished pieces. Start with your sketches, how you did your colors, the whole process. It's like a math proof. Almost anybody's going to want to see your sketches. So get good at doing sketches if you're an artist, put them in your portfolio, and create as much visibility and transparency into your process, and then let somebody know how long it took you to do it, right? Because that's going to be a question. How long did it take you to do that? And then they're going to give you an art test anyway. So just keep that in mind, right? Almost anybody coming into the industry brand new is going to have to do an art test. So try to be as honest, transparent, and visible in your portfolio for the review you're doing. But don't expect to work in the industry without an art test. If you've got no games to show, if you don't have anything, people are going to make you do that art test.
So I did put in the chat for those on the line. I did go ahead and put in the attendance link for today's session. So students, everyone on the line, make sure you complete that to get your, just let us know that you're participating. And if you do have more people with you that are not like on their own computer, like in a classroom, like how some of you are, for all of the students to get the credit, just make sure that they all complete the survey. Just go ahead and share that out there. But is there any last questions? I do see there's one more in there, and we have a few more minutes, and so let's go ahead and get those last questions in.
Yeah, feel free to ask me anything. Let's see what we got. My students need to hear someone who hires people to tell them the real learning about it. Yeah, and if I could give any advice, if there are any teachers, one of the reasons to get students working on these teams is to get them a lot of the softer skills, right? I can tell you 3 things that I specifically interview for. I interview for self-awareness, I interview for empathy, and I interview for how respectfully a person expresses their thoughts. And respect isn't about using the word sir. Everybody on my team calls me Jerry. I want to be, part of the team, regardless of my role in the company. But how do you let somebody know that what they're doing doesn't resonate well? How do you do that respectfully? How do you have empathy for your player that you're building things for? And self-awareness. How aware are you about your biases and your behaviors? Those soft skills manifest themselves the first time somebody works on a team with people who have different skill sets. Engineers talk and look at the world a certain way. Game designers talk about and look at the world a certain way. And artists look at the world a certain way. And they communicate their art, their craft in different ways. And being aware of all of that is super important. And the best way to start that is by doing it. And getting those kids in teams. If they start to fight, that's where you're going to or have difficulty. You're going to start to see where they have gaps in self-awareness, where they have gaps in communication, and where they have gaps in empathy. And all of those 3 things are needed to make the long haul of making a video game. Anybody else have anything they want to ask? Because, I'm here for you guys. So anybody have anything they need? you know, and if any of you are teachers, you know, for New Mexico and El Paso, I set time aside, you know, a few times every quarter to do talks at schools, you know, remote now, obviously because of the pandemic. But if there is something that you think is helpful, if you want to cover a particular topic, you can feel free to reach out to me directly. And if I can find time in the next couple of months to spend an hour with your class, I gladly do that. You know, I want to give back locally, and I want to see young people, if they're passionate about games, you know, it's a lot easier. You know, I'll go back to something that I often tell politicians who ask me about gaming. I am sometimes asked to talk to people who are representatives at the state level or the congressional level. And the first question I ask them is, how many of you in the room are really excited for your young students to be waiting tables at a restaurant? No one raises their hands. How about working as a cook at McDonald's? Nobody raises their hand. How about working out in the oil field and capping and uncapping oil rigs? Nobody raises their hands. Then I say, okay, so I want you to really think about the kinds of jobs you want your children are passionate about, and then create legislation and promote, you know, school programs that help young people work in the 21st century. Last thing I tell them is this: if we need to cook, we have books with recipes. If we need to build a data center to house data, we know how to do that. We know how to put solar panels on a roof. We know how to build bridges, and we know how to make cars. All of those things can be learned from a book. What the next amazing video game is will not come from a book. I have seen some of the best ideas come from the least experienced people, because they're high in empathy and self-awareness, and they really are in tune with how they play games. And they give input that can make millions of dollars worth of difference in development and how well received a game is. So being in games is part being passionate about games, but also part being a player who has high self-awareness. So just keep in mind that whenever you're doing something creative, the challenge you have is you don't get to open a book and figure out what the next best anything creative is. You have to draw from inspiration and come up with something truly unique on your own. And that challenge in itself is what I find exciting about games. Nothing else is like it. And I love that. So that's my pitch to all of you. Last question from Kalia, just so I can write this all down. What are some different jobs within video game designing? I'm assuming you're talking about design and not art and not tech, because you said designing. So I'll talk about game design in particular. And then if you want to know about art and tech, I can do that as well. In game design, there are system designers. There are level designers. There are creative designers. There are narrative designers. Those are kind of the four big ones at various levels in their career. You can have some people who focus on particular aspects, like combat design. That's a sort of subset of action RPGs or shooters, but combat design is part system, part narrative, so there's an overlap. So hopefully that answers your question about video game design sub things, but you can also Google that. Look at Full Sail, look at some of these other schools. You'll be able to find all sorts of titles and different areas of focus in game design in itself. Same thing for artists, and same things for like front-end developer, back-end developer, full stack developer, if you're talking the tech side.
Well, thank you so very much for your time. I think that was extremely informative. And I know we haven't had a program like this before in this area, this industry. So thank you so much. And I was one of those that reached out and networked and stalked you to get you here. So I'm very thankful.
And
That
again, Anita, sorry for being late. I really
Oh,
was.
no problem, no problem. I know things get away, but we're just very happy to have you here today. So for everyone on the line, the session is officially over. Just make sure before you leave that you complete that attendance survey and make sure you hit submit. That's the big step, is that make sure you hit submit so that it gets counted there. And our next STEM series session will be once we get back from break in January. It'll be on space biology. So we'll be talking with the lead scientist that has gotten chilies into space aboard the recent expedition. So switching gears just a bit, just a tad. So with that, you all are dismissed and you guys have a great holiday break. Thanks.
Take care, everyone. Thank you for your time. Have a good one. Bye-bye.